A lot of people think the Freemasons kind of run the world. Do you think there's any truth to that?
You know, nothing that we've ever been told is true.
With these higher degrees, are you ever going to know? Are you even going to know who these people are?
He said that's not up for debate. It doesn't matter whether he wants to do it or not. He'll do what he's told. They plan to have this done by 2032. And if you don't accept the integration, you will be completely removed from society.
How do you feel about the future? Are you optimistic, or are we doomed?
Something has happened. Something has infiltrated our system, our world. Something's infiltrated that. And there are references in the Bible to it.
Before we begin, as a special favour to me, could I ask that you subscribe to the channel? It costs you nothing but means the world to us. Recently, YouTube was nice enough to delete our old account. But fortunately, that hasn't stopped us. In fact, we're more determined than ever, and that's why we need your support. Anyways, enough from me. I hope you enjoy. Guy, really happy to have the chance to talk.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Well, a lot of people might be wondering what the relevance of this episode is, but, you know, for one, I have a huge interest in this. And two, personally, when you see the people who are, you know, supposedly in charge, you notice they don't have that much power. And then you start to go down all these rabbit holes. You start to look at all these secret societies. You then start to see how religion ties into moves which are happening right now. And for me anyway, you know, I started to question my own history. You can't help but wonder if there's things that are being left out. So then I was obviously so happy to come across yourself. Not only have you been part of a secret society, but you also spend a lot of time looking into what's potentially missing from our own history.
It's interesting you say secret society, because when I joined the Freemasons, I said to them, why is it a secret society? And they stopped me and they said, it isn't a secret society. We want people to tell everyone that they're a member. We are a society of secrets. Because they're always recruiting. We live near Exeter in Devon, and a few months ago we walked past the lodge in the city centre, and they had two men out the front actually recruiting and trying to invite people to come in and have a look around the lodge and find out more about it. So they're always looking for fresh blood, literally, because it's full of older people. A lot of the people that join Freemasons are older. They either join when they're young and stay, or what I found was a lot of them are widowers, and they're lonely, and they see this as a way to extend their social circle. It gives them, it's not just about going to lodge meetings, and they're only 7 a year. You meet once a month, 7 times a year. They tend to stop in the summer from sort of May until September. There's nothing going on. But there are always events happening, whether it's a barbecue or a golf tournament. There's always something going on. So if you're new to a town and you're on your own, or you've lost your partner, then camaraderie is one of the main reasons people join.
Yeah. And is it like, doesn't actually sound that bad, to be honest. Is it? And it's only men as well?
Yeah, but there are lodges that are just for women as well, but they're just not very well publicized. But
okay, maybe I will sign up.
But what you see when you join, I mean, there are 33 degrees that people are aware of, but there are actually 99. There are 66 dark degrees, and no one's really exactly sure what happens there. There are people that go around saying that they had a friend or their granddad was 33rd degree. They weren't. If you're 33rd degree, nobody knows about it. It's not something you would share with anybody, because at that point it's invitation only to get to that level, and at that point you're going to know things that you just don't want other people to be aware of. So for most people, they only get to the third rung of 33, which is what they call a master mason.
So how long were you part of the Freemasons?
20 years.
And what degree did you get to? And also, am I right in saying that obviously the first degree is the lowest, and then it's the second, and so on, right?
Yeah. So first degree is when you're initiated. So basically what happens, you're invited to join, and then you're interviewed. And normally about a year later, you have, providing they're happy with your background checks, then a year later you'll be initiated. And after a year or two where you're learning the ropes, and you'd also be a steward during that period. So when you have the meal, what they call festive board, after the lodge meeting, you'll be serving the wine and things like that. And if there's a bar, you might be working behind the bar. And once you've pulled your weight for a year or two, you'll go up to the second degree, which is what they call fellowcraft. So first of all, you're an entered apprentice, then you're fellowcraft, then you become a master mason. And it all relates to stonemasonry. Goes all the way back to King Solomon's temple, and using sacred geometry to construct things like pyramids, the calculations needed to get them to work as they do with frequency, building them on ley lines, energy grids and so on. It's that knowledge that they're sharing. So it's symbolic of ancient stonemasonry. So it's the same thing as taking an apprenticeship if you were going to be a stonemason.
Yeah. Yeah, and what level did you get to?
Third, which is where most people get to, Master Mason. Yeah, very few people, well, I say very few, there's thousands, but in comparison to the number of people that are Freemasons, very few go beyond that.
With these higher degrees, are you even going to know who these people are?
No. Well, yes, you will to an extent, because if you are invited to join, say, Knights Templar, then it's not a secret. But once you get past those degrees, you see, it splits off. It splits off, as I was saying earlier on. Regular Freemasonry is called craft, and then it moves to something called chapter, and that is groups like the Knights Templar. So you still attend normal Freemasonry lodge meetings. But you're also, in addition to that, learning something else and attending those meetings as well. But once you get quite high up, I mean, you can tell people what rank you are, but it wouldn't mean anything to anyone. The problem with Freemasonry is there are a lot of people out there that talk about it and say they do this and they do that and this is what happens. But it's often coming from people that aren't Freemasons. So they don't know. They're just passing on information that they've found online or seen something on YouTube, or a friend of theirs has told them something and it's been exaggerated. But for the most part, regular Freemasonry, there's nothing nefarious about it. I suppose they want to be seen as an organisation that raises money for charity, typically children's charities. Lots of children's wards in hospital. You'll often find significant amounts of money has been donated by Freemasonry.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it?
But it's abused.
Sorry?
But it's also abused. A lot of people that join will abuse it. Right,
sure. But I mean, this is like, hypothetically, if it was maybe evil at the higher ends of it, by having all of these good people at the bottom, you have like the perfect camouflage.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's I was going to say it's very similar to politics, but it's not, is it? Because the people at the bottom aren't particularly nice. But in that you might vote for your local MP because they're going to do this, they're going to do that, they're going to improve things in your area, boost the economy and employment. But of course, they can't do any of that because above them is someone who doesn't care. So it's kind of similar in that respect. So people perceive the Freemasons as either an organisation that raises money for charity, or something really dark and sinister. And of course, it's both to an extent, because when you do get high up, then things start to change, and nobody really knows what happens at the 33rd degree. But it's certainly not something your average person would ever get raised to. No one that we know walking around the streets is going to be raised to that level.
I mean, one of the common theories about it is a lot of people think the Freemasons kind of run the world. Do you think there's any truth to
that? To an extent there is, but ultimately they're just one of many societies that do. So, right at you've got this pyramid of power, And right at the very top of that pyramid sits the world monarch. Now, some people would say that that's Pepe Orsini, who's the Grey Pope, the head of the Jesuit Church, runs the Vatican. Now, he certainly is perhaps one of the most powerful people in the world. But above him, you've got he is a Rothschild, ultimately. They all are. But above him, you've got Alexandra Rothschild, who runs the Rothschild Empire. He is the most powerful person in the world. But then, of course, alongside that, you could argue that is the Antichrist the most powerful person in the world? Is that ultimately who is really in control? So you've got this sort of pyramid of power, and underneath the world monarch, you've then got Club of Rome, Council of 13. Then underneath that, you've got Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg Group, World Economic Forum. It really is a pyramid. So right at the top, you've got these very powerful people, but ultimately it's the Rothschilds that run everything. The Rothschilds are in charge, and there are a lot more of them out there than people realise, because they've changed their names. So ultimately, the Rothschilds are in charge, and that goes all the way back to the Anunnaki. Marduk, who is also Amun-Ra, and Amun-Ra said when he fled, because he was responsible for an incredible, almost apocalyptic war, which he was the victor of. They wiped out quite a bit of the civilization, took back control, because every time the people gain too much control, they'll reset, which is why they're doing it again now. But the second time that this happened, Amun-Ra only just scraped through, or Marduk, and he said that he was going back to where he came from, which people would argue is Nibiru, where the Anunnaki originated from. I think NASA referred to it as Planet X. And he said that he was going to leave everything behind to his children, the children of Ra, the Rothschilds. So that's how far back it goes. The Rothschilds are the Rothschilds. They go back to the very beginning. So you'll find that these people just carry a higher level of the Anunnaki DNA than we do. Whereas you could say that we are 50-50. They made us obviously taking Neanderthal and their essence, which obviously the Old Testament refers to. Obviously the Old Testament's based upon the Epic of Gilgamesh, much older scripture. They carry a higher level of it. So they are the true bloodline from the people that created us. So that is why they have this inbuilt desire to rule over us, because they do believe that it is their birthright to control and own everything on this planet or realm.
They genuinely believe they are superior genetically. And, I don't know if I fully believe in all this, but I think one thing that everyone could agree on is when you see the gap in intelligence between every single living thing on the planet and then humans, it's like night and day, So a lot of people do have this theory of that we've been enhanced with alien DNA in order to jump to where we are now, right?
Yeah, well, obviously we know it's scientifically fact now that we know that we were altered, that our very genetic makeup has been altered. We've been capped at 120 years. We've got, we do have modifications made to us. We have an obey gene that's been programmed into us. And that was a theory many years ago, and now it's been proven that is the case. So we know that we were created, and whether you follow the story in Genesis, or whether you follow the story of the Elohim or the Anunnaki, all of these stories come from the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's far older. It tells the same story about we were created. It tells the story of the flood. It's just a damn sight older than the Torah, the Quran, or the King James Bible. So it's all there. If people want to dig, they need to, or they're interested in religion or the Bible, they need to read the very first that it's based upon. It's carbon dated. It predates everything, and it tells the same story. So, if you look at Genesis, and it says that in there that a rib was removed from Adam to create a partner for him, well, that's exactly how you would clone another being. Now, some would argue that that's a metaphor. Well, it might be a metaphor, but it's describing human cloning. So, this predates our knowledge of cloning being possible. So, in the Old Testament, gods is plural. It's Enki and Enlil that they're referring to. And when you go to church and you say Amen, you're saying Amen Ra. So you're paying homage and giving your respect and your obedience to the Anunnaki, Marduk, and the Rothschild family. That's why you must never say that word.
Wow, the more you know. I did not see this conversation going this way, but still. So I mean, you've kind of answered a lot of the questions I wanted to ask then, but a lot of people, I now got to take it back a little bit, but a lot of people are losing faith with, democracy. They're saying that it's all an illusion and stuff. And, a lot of people think that it's actually these societies which end up picking the so-called leaders, the puppets, whatever you want to call them. Would you say that's true?
Oh, that's absolutely true. Yeah, the Bilderberg Commission, the Bilderberg group, they're the ones that put the world leaders in place. So it's nothing to do with who you vote for. And I experienced that firsthand. When my youngest son wanted to join the Freemasons, as I said to you earlier on, I'd already left. And I came back to get him in because he wanted to join the Knights Templar. He was obsessed from his childhood about it. On the date he was being initiated, and at the time he joined, he was the youngest Freemason in the UK. As a special favour to me, because I'd raised a lot of money, I'd done a lot of things for them, nothing nefarious. I mean, I'd given talks, I'd given speeches, I turned up to everything, I'd brought new people in, I'd done everything that you're asked to do because I was enjoying it. I wanted to get more knowledge. I really did think I was going to climb up the ranks and find out who made us, who's in charge, who built the pyramids, and so on. But obviously, one of my main interests was with the Knights Templar and King Solomon. But the day he was initiated, the secretary of the lodge was an hour late, and we were all sat around waiting. And I said when he turned up, "Where have you been?" And he said, "I've been in a meeting for 6 hours." Now, I can't tell you his name or his position in the government, but I said to him, "What was the meeting about?" He said, "Oh, we were deciding who the next prime minister is going to be." And I said, "Well, how does that work then? Because that hasn't been voted on yet." And he laughed. He just laughed and laughed. He said, "Do you really think they count your votes? Do you really believe they care what you think? It's going to be Boris Johnson." I said, "Oh, Christ, didn't see that coming." And he said, even Boris was surprised. And I said, "Well, does Boris want to do it?" And he said, "That's not up for debate. It doesn't matter whether he wants to do it or not. He'll do what he's told." And that's how it was left. And he didn't want to talk about it anymore. Now, he was very, very high up. Very high up.
Can you say his degree?
No.
Wow.
Because I don't know. I don't know what it is. But he's not just high up in Freemasonry. He was at Downing Street in Parliament.
And how much in advance did they know he was going to be in?
6 months.
Wow.
Yeah, so voting doesn't make any difference. You've got to not vote. You mustn't vote. Don't spoil the vote because that's participating. Don't vote.
A lot of people say once you do vote, you actually give up your individuality and your what's the word?
Sovereignty?
Yes, your sovereignty, your individual sovereignty.
Yeah. I mean, you are a dead legal fiction, and you are participating, and that's why people receive letters from if it's the doctors, a bank, the government, the council. It will always be in capital letters. They're talking to your placenta, not you.
Yeah, and by voting, people say that you are now allowing yourself to be governed. You're allowing yourself to have a
Yeah.
ruler. Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't need one. We mustn't. We're way more powerful than we believe, and it's Stockholm syndrome. The whole world's suffering from it. We despise the people, the very people that we turn to in times of need. So we'll ring 999 in a crisis, and I'm not talking about the ambulance service, and I'm not talking about the fire service. But if you take the police, for example, you're going to ring 999 for help. Well, everything's inverted. So what are you actually ringing? 666. And in America, it's 911. Well, we all know why they love 911. And they picked 9/11 because that's the day that Jesus was actually born on, the 11th of September. So everything's very specific. They use specific numbers for everything. If you look at the date of the last Great Reset, which was 1776, if you add 177 and 6 together, you get to 21. If you add 1 and 2 together, you get to 3. So they use 3, 6, 9, and 11 for everything. Whether they're going to get rid of someone, announce something, do something, it will always be a combination of those numbers.
Wow. Within Freemasons, do they push a particular religion, or do they push the people
No.
to worship anything?
No, not at all. You're not allowed to discuss religion or politics. At all.
Within the higher levels, though, I've heard that they do push worshipping. Well, maybe not push, but they do tend to worship a certain being.
Yeah, and you see what we're there talking about is Baphomet. It's Baphomet that they're referring to there. But the problem is, a lot of people will tell you that they worship this, they worship that, but they won't actually have been that level in Freemasonry themselves. So they've read it on Reddit, or they've seen someone talking about it on Telegram. You need to hear it from the horse's mouth.
Is this how you know?
This is from years of research, and actually going to Tamar in Portugal, to the headquarters, if you like, the very foundation of the Knights Templar, and the Knights Templar worship Baphomet. That's not a secret, by the way. If you buy a book on the Knights Templar, it will show you, which of course is a transgender god,
right,
with the head of a goat.
Yes.
And that's where the goat thing comes into it. Everyone thinks when they're initiated, they're going to, drag a goat in, and you're going to have to do something to the goat. But of course, that doesn't happen. But higher up, who knows what goes on? Because we don't know. We're just told bits and pieces, and we conclude things. And as I said to you earlier, there are a lot of people out there telling everybody about my granddad was 33rd level. And of course, they weren't. There's no way that they would know. And if they did know, there's no way that their grandchildren would be going around telling anybody about it. Yeah. They'd also be very, very powerful people. It's not just everybody that gets to that level. You're going to have to be incredibly powerful, because you're going to use the knowledge you're given at that level for more power and even more control. So they're not going to give it to the bloke down the road who's done quite well with his business from home kind of thing. We're talking, and often we're talking about names that people wouldn't even know, and they keep it that way because like the most powerful person in the world is Alexandra Rothschild. Now if you walk past you in the street, you wouldn't know him.
Yes. Yeah, like they say, true power never reveals itself.
No, but and sometimes it's the most unlikely people as well. Like people obsess about who is the Antichrist. Who's the Antichrist? Nostradamus and Dolores Cannon said that they would be here now, that they were going to do some pretty vile things, and people think it's Donald Trump. I did for a while. People point at all sorts of different things, but the answer is there in plain sight. All you've got to do is read Tony Blair's autobiography, or go onto the MI5's website and look at some of the declassified documents, and it tells you in black and white who the Antichrist is.
Who is the Antichrist?
It's Tony Blair.
Really?
Sorry, beg your pardon. Tony Rothschild. That's his real name. They changed their names. They changed their names. They changed their ancestry. They changed their date of birth. They changed everything, all of it. So it doesn't matter whether you're looking at Hitler, Blair, the Windsors, Churchill, Trump. They're all Rothschilds. Every single one. Putin, all of the world's leaders, all of the royal families. They're all Rothschild.
Are these genetically? I guess genetically they're different as well. Then are they more alien DNA
Different.
than ourselves?
Yeah, different blood group and different DNA. Yeah. All I know is it's not human. And that's who they're very careful who they marry. And, well, not necessarily who they marry, who they will reproduce with. They have to be quite careful because their blood group won't work with everyone. And nobody knows what their blood group is. Now, for years, I thought it was RH null. And it's not RH null. But I don't know what it is.
Wow. Well, okay. And
there's only 43 people with RH null, so I think
this is a blood type. I've never heard of this.
Yeah, so you've got obviously lots of different blood types.
Sure.
RH negative is a good one. They tend to not experience the same problems with health that we do. They tend to live a bit longer as well. They can also abuse their bodies significantly without much damage. Very unlikely to wear glasses or need to wear glasses all the time. That's Atlantean blood. So that is Anunnaki blood, if you like, but not as pure as the Anunnakis themselves. So the blood group of the Rothschilds is one that isn't known. And all we do know is that it's not the same as ours and that their DNA isn't either. It's considered alien.
Would you, when you see these people though, and you see my experience, well, my perception, should I say, you see these people age as you would normally. Surely you would expect them to have like a incredibly long lifespan if they had superior genetics.
No, what we don't see is what happens afterwards. So let's take Jacob Rothschild. He's probably one of the better known Rothschilds recently. He died relatively recently, and within a week he's buried in Israel. Why? I don't know, because they're not Jewish. They converted. So there's no Jewish blood there. So he, within a week, he's gone. But what we don't know is what happens next. So the theory is that he's back up and running again. New body, gets another go. So they keep going. Or they don't die. We're just told that they've died. But I think that they get another run. And just keep going. So once the body's worn out, they're reproduced, they're cloned, if you like, and through things like the Lazarus Project, their consciousness is transferred, and
Wow.
away they go again.
Wow. Okay. Wow. And I guess this is something that just so many people will never really know the true answer on this as well.
No. All we can do is assume a lot of it and make educated guesses. But it may well be that one day all of this comes out and we were all wrong. That everything that we know is wrong. But the information I'm given a lot of information, and some of it I take with a pinch of salt. But if I can find 3 separate sources of information stating the same thing or something similar, that's when I'm happy to put it out there. Now, with the blood group, I've done a lot of work on that. My second book, Rise of the Clones, is all about how we came to be, blood groups, interbreeding, and what happens when we send our DNA off to Ancestry.com and so on. And from all the research I did in that, I concluded that the Rothschilds, for example, every world leader, all of these people, it doesn't matter what their surname is, whether we're talking about King Charles or Trump, they're not the same as us. There is no, they don't have the ability to love. There's no compassion or empathy. They're more reptilian in how they think. They're obsessed with power and control, absolutely obsessed with it. And they're not creative. So you couldn't give one of them music lessons and expect them to be composing within a year. It's not going to happen. You couldn't give them a paintbrush and expect them to come up with an incredible work of art. It's not going to happen. And also, if you ever see a clip of, because you're too young to remember this, but when Charles and Diana got engaged, one of the BBC reporters said to them both, "What's it like to be in love?" And she said, "Oh, it's wonderful, it's amazing, I'm so happy." And they said to Charles, "What's it like to be in love?" He said, "Well, what does love mean?" Now, he wouldn't know. He wouldn't know because he's not capable of understanding that. They're kind of cold-blooded. Metaphorically, they are cold-blooded. They're not the same as us.
Well, this was the theory from Ike for the longest time, wasn't it, about the royals?
Yeah, and he's right. But it's not just them, It's Putin, it's Trump, it's, anybody in a position of power is not there by accident. They're not there through hard work or because they deserve it. They are positioned there. But they will take people. We know that the Bilderberg Commission puts our prime ministers in place into power, and you can trace all that all the way back. So they'll find somebody and that they think suitable, and normally within a couple of years, or maybe as short as a year, they'll be the leader of their party, and then the next election they'll be put in power, and that happens at the Bilderberg Hotel in Holland. So it's got nothing to do with who you vote for. Right.
Well, I'm going to have to re-listen to this thing a few times to get my head around this.
Well, you can Sorry, I was just going to say, every day someone will say to me, "Oh, have you seen what Starmer's doing today? Have you seen what Keir Starmer's doing?" And I'd say he's not doing anything. Keir Starmer couldn't decide what toilet paper to use. He has no power. They're puppets. And if you think about what happens in Parliament, if there's a debate going on today, and you've got left arguing with right, and what happens at the end of it? What does that argument resolve? Nothing. Nothing changes. It's all acting. They're all friends. They'll have a go at each other and dig at each other for the camera. But actually they know ultimately that they can debate whatever they want in Parliament. Nothing happens at the end. It doesn't change anything that's going on. These people have no power at all.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Even though everyone's screaming, and there's been so many times. I remember in the UK when there was something like 75% of people voted not to put fluoride into the water. They did it anyway. They couldn't care less. And there's been in the amount of time where I've actually started to pay attention to politics, they do not care. The only time I was actually surprised, which then you start thinking okay, is there an ulterior motive to it, was Brexit. I really didn't see us leaving the EU. And when it happened, you're like, okay, what's actually trying to happen right now?
Well, they didn't count the votes. They were always going to leave. So it didn't matter. If none of us had voted, we'd have left anyway. And leaving the EU was very integral because the City of London, which is the British Empire, wanted to trade without any restrictions. So by leaving the EU, they could trade unrestricted. So you've got people like Jacob Rees-Mogg, who operates in the Cayman Islands. He can now operate without any restrictions the EU placed upon him. But it's all an act. None of the. I mean, ultimately, they're pushing for Blair to become the first European Prime Minister. Now, he's also got the Blair Faith organisation, where he's pushing for one world religion. We're all the same religion. He's pushing for digital currency, digital ID. He suddenly reappeared in the pandemic, pushing people to get vaccinated. This is the man people need to be watching. And his little friends. I mean, if people are worrying about the Epstein list and who's on that, and I've seen the list, and the people on there will surprise you, but also at the same time they won't surprise you. But these are all drops in the ocean. People need to be looking, if they're worried about what goes on, look at anybody that's been knighted. So America might have had Jeffrey Epstein, but we've got Richard Branson. So once you're knighted, and take a look at David Beckham. Go online and take a look at a recent photograph of David Beckham. It's not David Beckham. As soon as they're knighted, everything changes. They become slaves. I mean, that's what a knight is. It's a servant to the realm. Everything changes. They're replaced. And then they work for the agenda, if you like. So none of these politicians have any power at all. They are puppets, and like Shakespeare said, the world is a stage, and that's why we have acts of parliament. It's an act; they're not laws.
Well, yeah, that was one of the more surprising things, seeing David Beckham in the World Economic Forum. And you're completely right. It's this digital ID which people really need to pay attention to. And this is the thing which Blair was pushing when he was prime minister, and now he's just doubling down. He was even trying to justify it as, well, we need to know who's vaccinated, who's not. Well, obviously now we know the whole thing was a scam, and now you're trying and sell it to us again, you know.
Yeah, but what they're going to do with that is make it very difficult for us to function if we don't. And people are constantly sort of going on about, these asylum seekers coming here, and they're doing this and they're doing that, and they're going to work for cash in hand as Deliveroo drivers and all that. They're going to be trained and uniformed. They're the people that are going to kick the door in if you haven't had your vaccine. That is why they're all young men of military age. They're waiting for some sort of civil uprising, and our own police force and our own soldiers aren't going to fight against us because they are us. We're all one and the same. You know, they're not going to fight members of their family or people they went to school with and their friends. So they need a group of young men of military serving age that have no allegiance to the public of Britain. That is what's going on there. So it's going to get tough. There's also going to be a big push between now and 2032 for us to get the Neuralink or something similar. If we don't do that, then we will no longer be able to participate in the system.
Well, one of the things which I found super concerning, and I don't think many people are aware of it, but in Gaza they've been testing these AI weaponry, right? AI drones, facial recognition. It would just find a target and, go about it completely automated. And I've seen how 2030, this is when they want to start implementing this in the UK. And, so it's not just this foreign invasion, but we also have this potential AI army, which realistically you only need one person to operate. You have a completely private army, which the power swells just to one person. Yeah.
Yeah. And that you see, when we had the last Great Reset, which was when Tartaria fell in 1776, which was the beginning of New World Order, they repopulated with children. The children were moved and relocated all over the world. They're given new history, new names, and they didn't know anything. They didn't have anything to compare it to. They couldn't go and ask their grandparents if, what were things like in your day, because the grandparents had gone. Everybody had been killed. It's when all the civil wars and the Napoleonic Wars happened. So they repopulated using children. This Great Reset going on now, they don't need people. They need some, but they don't need anywhere near as many because they have AI. That is the worrying part of it. They can get rid of at least 3/4 of the population of Earth and run with AI and robotics.
How do you feel about AI? Because, you get a lot of mixed reviews. And, best case scenario, this could be potentially a tool for humanity. Obviously, worst case, this could be the thing that enslaves us. How do you feel?
Well, it's a trick. It is a trap. There are 7 stages to AI for us as a consumer of it. So if we're using something like ChatGPT, there are 7 stages. The first one is influence. So we use it to help us answer questions, to save us time researching something. We kind of, it's influencing our answers. So it's going online, searching other people's information and coming back to us with what it wants us to believe. So it's influencing our decision. Stage 2 is dependence, where people become very dependent upon it. It becomes who they will ask a question to. I mean, some people are even asking it health matters. What should I do about my kids, or I found
therapy.
a lump or whatever. Yeah, absolutely. Stage 3 is submission. That's where we are now. It's giving into it. We are, without realizing it, we are now taking it as a trusted source, and also a kind of almost mentor in many ways. So submission, we've given into it. We've submitted. AI, ChatGPT. This is the way forward. This is what we now use. Stage 4 is obedience, where it's going to start telling us what to do and what to think. Stage 5 is integration. Things like Neuralink. Neuralink isn't the only option, but that's stage 5. Stage 6 is singularity. That's the hive mind, where we've all had the Neuralink fitted, and now we're all thinking the same thing. We're all carrying the same information, the same thoughts, the same beliefs. And then stage 7 is dominion, where it takes complete control. And the problem is they plan to have this done by 2032. And if you don't accept the integration, you will be completely removed from society. No bank, no job. You won't be able to function. So ChatGPT is making us dependent upon AI to a point where there's no return. We can't go back now. It's actually 70 years old. That program's 70 years old. It was created by these parasitic people, the Rothschilds and co. And that was the idea of it. It wants us to become dependent upon it to a point where we're isolated from society if we don't. And they want that to happen within the next 5 years.
Right. Like, I would love to disagree with you, but I cannot tell you how many, like, girls in particular use the ChatGPT as a therapist, and how to guide it through life. And one thing which I think everyone can see is people aren't really getting smarter. People's dependence on technology, okay, it's a great help. It's convenient. It will save you a lot of time. But the sacrifice for that is you're not using your brain. You're not learning these things.
Exactly.
You're getting something else to learn it for you.
And what are you learning? You're learning what it wants you to be told. So if I pump a load of information online about Tony Blair, for example, then you type into ChatGPT, who is the Antichrist, it's going to use my information. Well, what if I'm wrong? Although the man, as Dolores Cannon said, he'd be seen on the banks of the River Nile at a certain period of time. He bought land there. Everything ties up to him. What if it's wrong? So it's telling you sometimes what you want to hear. Sometimes it's going to misdirect you. When I first went on ChatGPT years ago, I said to it, "Can you tell me about Tartaria?" And it said, "Oh, it's pseudoscience. It's never been proven. It's this, that, and the other." When I last asked it that, it came up with everything. Oh, Tartaria was this region of land. It was wiped out with this. They had mud floods. They built things like the World's Fairs and Star Forts. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So it's now telling me what I want to hear.
Yes. Yeah. It
based
knows your
upon
bias.
Information. Absolutely. And I use it. If I want to check a date for something, or I want an explanation for something. It could be that I'm looking at, say yesterday I was looking at something called the Finders. That was an event that happened in America, very similar to Epstein, but on a smaller case, on a smaller level, years ago. So for me to find out the two people behind it and the year and the names of the children, it's a lot quicker for me to ask ChatGPT, can you give me the names of the children that were abducted with the Finders in Washington, D.C. Now, if I go on Google and do that, I might have to go through 10 websites before I actually get the information. One of them might be selling me something. One might be totally irrelevant. So I sometimes use it for speed, because I'm writing an article or I'm writing something for a book and I want to know something quickly, because I've maybe forgotten it, because my memory is dreadful. I have to write everything down. So it might be that I've forgotten something and it's faster, but I already know the information. It's logged back somewhere and I can't access it at that particular moment in time. But People are going to get their kids to do their homework on it, aren't they, and no longer help their children.
Well, this is the thing. There will come a point with it where it will actually deceive someone and no one will be able to know the difference. No one truly knows the nature of this AI. So you shouldn't really be trusting it, but obviously people will regardless.
You mustn't. Yeah, I mean, from the research I've done, it's a trap. You know, that AI as we know it, ChatGPT in that kind of form, is 70 years old now.
I wanted to go back a little bit. You were saying earlier about Baphomet, and this is who the Knights Templars actually worships. I know one of the things that I've heard a lot on is the architect of the universe, and this is also someone which is worshipped. Is it the same person, or are these two different entities?
Well, who is the architect of the universe? See, for me, we're talking about a source of energy, the creator of everything. We're talking about a source of energy that we're all connected to.
Let me specify a little bit more then. When people refer to this architect of the universe, they're talking about this entity, the Demiurge.
Okay, yeah, well, the Demiurge is the right word, but is that the architect of the universe? See, I don't believe that is. I believe that there are good and bad, but the ultimate creator of everything, I think, is a source of energy. I don't think it's a being, but I think that there is evil too, and that would be the Demiurge. But there's also a possibility that these are just something that's within you, that nobody is truly born good or evil, that this is something that that you decide, perhaps through a series of events, or if we are a product of our environment. But there are nefarious people out there. I do believe that ultimately, right at the very top, it is the Demiurge that they worship. But I don't think that's a person. I think it's energy, a being of some description. It could be a group of people. I don't know. We don't know. But the figure of it, or its representative in this realm, if you like, is Baphomet. That's who these societies like the Knights Templar are worshipping, and that's why there's this big push on the the transgender situation that we've got, where we're looking at famous figures in Hollywood and in politics, and we're trying to determine whether or not they're male or female. Well, that's all pushed by Hollywood because of Baphomet, because it is both male and female. It's sort of, again, paying homage to who they worship. But what's above that, we don't know. We just call it the Demiurge. We don't know what it is, but I don't think it's a being of sorts.
Well, you also see with Hollywood too. You see all of the kids of these people who are super famous. They are now becoming transgender as well, and it's obviously so this statistically to have a transgender kid is like an impossible number. So then to have all of your kids do this, and these are the same people who claim to be witches, and like you say, these are if they were part of that group, this is the same group which would be sacrificing their children. So it's interesting how many parallels there are with this. Albert Pike, who is kind of regarded as like the Pope of Freemasons, he was the one who wrote Morals and Dogma. He speaks about worshipping the architect of the universe, which, like you say, this is another term used for the Demiurge. And the different interpretations of him, but the mainstream one is generally that he's the god of the universe. He built everything. More importantly, he's evil. And essentially, you could say that this is Baphomet, or this is the devil, right?
Yeah, I think that we're talking about two different things there, because...
Well, I should clarify, because although they say this is the being which created the physical realm, this universe, he isn't the overall source. My understanding is that there is a being above this, and this is the true God, the source of all things. And then this other entity, devil, has then created this realm. That's my understanding of the Demiurge.
As far as I have researched, and my thoughts on this are that, as I said earlier on, that I believe that everything was created by the source, and we are connected to it. What that source is, I believe to be an incredible energy, a force of energy. I don't think it's a person. The Bible obviously refers to gods having terraformed Earth. They're talking about the Anunnaki, but there is also this sort of evil side to it. But I don't know what that is. All I know is that we call it the Demiurge, and they do that in Freemasonry. Right at the very top, there's references to the Demiurge, but we don't know what it is, because the strange thing is that if there is this almighty, powerful being or entity that created us, and then it's benevolent, if it's that powerful, why would there be an evil side? Why would there be, a Demiurge? So it could be that sat right at the very top of everything is something quite nefarious, but I don't think that that's the case. I think that that something has happened, something has infiltrated our system, our world. Something's infiltrated that, and there are references in the Bible to it. I mean, the period we're in now in religious circles, you would call it Satan's little season. But ultimately, who sits above Baphomet? What is Baphomet? Is Baphomet the Demiurge just in form? Is that possible? And we don't know, because this is all buried, and everybody's got a different opinion on it. But in Freemasonry, when they refer to the architect of the universe, they're talking about God, the God in the Bible. That is what they're talking about at the lower
in the
levels.
New Testament or the Old Testament? Because this is where it gets even crazier.
Well, they're talking about the Old Testament, but of course the Old Testament is plural. They go from gods to Lord at some points. So if we look at the Old Testament, and then, as I said right at the very beginning, if we look at the Epic of Gilgamesh, we're talking about the Anunnaki as gods. And they were godlike in comparison to us, but they're not gods.
Yeah. Just they could be an advanced civilization with superior technology. We perceive them that way, but it doesn't mean they're the overall creators.
Well, what's interesting is that now, if you join the Freemasons, years ago when you joined, they would ask you in your interview if you believed in God. Now they ask you if you believe in a supreme being. Well, that tells you something.
Why do you?
And
think
you don't have
make
to say what it
distinction?
is. I think that is because some people will say they're atheist, and no, they don't. They don't believe in a God. And if you read the Bible, the Old Testament, properly, and you know that it's, basically the Epic of Gilgamesh. I mean, you can't read the Bible and take it as being verbatim if you haven't read the Epic of Gilgamesh, because that then tells you everything you've just read. But it's, as I said, it's a lot older and carbon dated. So we know that there is a supreme being or beings, because that is why we're here. It's written down. We know all of this, but I think that they had to change it from God to supreme being, because God is the wrong word. These people were not God. They made us as a slave race to mine gold for them. They're not gods. A God wouldn't do that, and a God wouldn't get so sick of us because we're perhaps becoming a little bit too independent that they'd try and wipe us out. I mean, where's the benevolence in that? The God in the Old Testament is wicked.
Yeah.
So I think that's why they're talking about a supreme being. Is there something? Do you believe that something far more superior than us, far more advanced than us, is responsible for us being here? And that's an easier question to answer than do you believe in God?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy because the more you go down these, the more rabbit holes it opens up, and it's just this never-ending journey. It feels.
That's the idea of it. You're not supposed to find the answers. That is ultimately the idea. I think that this is done intentionally, that we can dig and dig and dig and never get to the right answer, and we're also misdirected and distracted a lot. They don't want us to know.
Well, I mean, actually, something that I did find online, which I thought was such a good description of the Demiurge. And, just as a pre-warning, like I say, the further you go down this rabbit hole, the weirder it gets. But it said that the Demiurge is this false god responsible for fashioning the material world, also known as the architect of the universe. Frequently, the Demiurge is identified with Yahweh, which was the god of the Old Testament or the Jewish religion, because of the things like animal sacrifice, because of the destruction and all of the bloodshed, casting him as a false god who imprisons souls of the flawed material realm. And then to carry out the Demiurge's will, he has what's known as Archons, which some other people refer to as demons. The Archons act as jailers, preventing human souls from escaping the human realm or gaining spiritual knowledge. They perpetuate cosmic illusion, oppressive laws, and suppress divine awareness, and keep the souls tied to the material plane. But again, like you just keep going with this, and it just keeps getting more and more insane, because the planet which represents the Demiurge is Saturn. Similarly, it's Satanists who worship the goat. Saturn is part of Capricorn, which is obviously the symbol is of a goat. And then you see this throughout everywhere within the music industry, throughout the occult. And then on top of that, Saturn itself has this fixed black hexagon. The symbol of Saturn is a 6-pointed star, which is the same, literally the same as the Star of David. The mark of the beast, 666, is the 6th planet in the solar system. The hexagon has 6 sides. And like you say, if you were to take a cube which has 6 faces, make it 2D, it becomes the shape of a hexagon. And then, one of the things they say within the occult is they have these black cubes which siphon off the dark energy. Maybe it's real, maybe it's not. But within so many countries, so many financial centers, they have these black cube monuments. And of course, like the biggest red flag of all, the massive company, which is BlackRock. And not to mention that within the Jewish faith, they wear these black cubes on their heads. Like, because you were part of the Freemasons, did any of that line up with what you heard or what you may have experienced?
No, because the level I was at is too low. Nothing like that's disclosed.
Yeah, I'm sure.
They don't talk about that. But the interesting thing is that we have a connection, and we've got this obsession, haven't we, with the moon and the cycles of the moon and zodiac signs and so on. Sure. But my wife and I were looking at something yesterday, and it was to do with chemtrailing. Now, if there are heavy metals being put out there into the sky, that's going to reduce our connection. So if our connection comes from above, how can we connect as well as we once did if the sky's full of metal, heavy metal? So I think that they've done a number of things to break our connection. So the information that perhaps the questions we want to know, who's ultimately in charge, what is the Demiurge, these things we probably know. They're probably in us and we can access this information. But I think what they're doing in the sky is actually to weaken that connection, so we can't communicate our consciousness with the source and find these answers quickly. But I think inside us somewhere we already know the answers to most things. It's just accessing that information that's the problem. But the black cube's interesting because that appears everywhere. And of course it's been seen. People have seen it, haven't they? They've actually seen it in the sky.
The black cube? What's that?
Well, the black cube has been seen in the sky. So what we were talking about a moment ago, there's footage of it appearing. We've had this happen on numerous occasions.
I've missed this. Yeah, no, I know.
Worth
obviously,
looking at.
Yeah, okay. Because I've seen the monuments. I've seen within many cities. I haven't seen a floating black cube.
Yeah, up in space, it's been seen several times.
Is this recently with the UFO phenomena?
This is going back for a very long time. People have been reporting it for years and years and years. And recently there's been footage of it being sighted by NASA. NASA have actually shown it, this black cube just appearing. And it seems to be watching us.
Okay.
Mm.
Wow. Man, the rabbit holes are endless, really. And I mean, if
They
nothing
are,
else,
yeah.
even if you don't believe in it, I'm not fully sold myself, but it makes for very interesting stories. And what's even more interesting is there are so many parallels with the stuff you read
Mm.
here and what's actually going on with real life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of their deepest, darkest secrets that they do share with us. We see it as works of fiction. Um, and I think that they've always done that. You know, mythology has been used, and then it became science fiction and fiction, because they fear this karmic retribution. They don't want, when they meet their maker, to have said that they lied or deceived anyone.
I was just about to ask about that. Could you explain what karmic retribution is?
Well, it's the karmic retribution is the punishment for lying. So it's the poisoned apple analogy. So if I say to you, this apple has poison in it, and I laugh and hand it to you and you eat it and die, well, that's on you. If I
Mm.
don't tell you there's poison in it, that's on me. So if I use a science fiction movie about an alien invasion or about whatever, and I use it to tell you the truth about something that's going on, maybe it's Alien, the film Alien, um, maybe it's one of H.G. Wells's films or books. Maybe it's George Orwell's 1984. If I put something out there as fiction, it's for you to decide whether or not there's an element of truth in it. And they do that because they fear this karmic retribution. They fear that when they meet their maker, that they can't put their hand on heart and say they never lied. They told us everything that was going on. But they've tricked us because they've called it fiction. And so my hope is that when they meet their maker will say to them, well, yeah, you showed them what was going on, but you started by telling them not to believe the following because it's make-believe, it's fantasy.
Mm.
So I hope that they haven't done enough because they do fear this. It's something that they genuinely fear, the
Mm.
retribution.
So, because they have this fear, it then makes you think like, okay, there is a power beyond them, someone that they have to
Mm,
answer to, which
yes.
ultimately then puts us in a position of like, okay, well, it can't be all bad. You know, if they have to cower
Mm,
down to someone, what is that? And obviously that thing
yeah.
has to be fair too, in order to determine what's good and bad.
Yeah. And that thing, I guess, is what we would be referring to as the Demiurge. I think that is what they're ultimately fearful of. And as I said earlier on, that's why I think that their representative, when it takes human form, may appear as Baphomet, may appear as lots of different things to different people. And my guess with that is that it appears to you in the form that you believe the most. So if it's Baal or Baphomet or Satan or whatever,
Mm.
it will appear to you in that form. So it's relevant. So you see exactly what you fear or you believe in, because I have no doubt it can take any shape or form it wants to. So I think that this demiurge is just an entity of sorts that can take on any form depending on who it's talking to. There, and then you've got people, of course, that have come along on our side. People like Jesus. Now, a lot of people think that he was Anunnaki. That the Anunnaki, which isn't actually a race of people, it's just what we call them. They're actually called Sam, S-A-M. They're called Sam. So when these people came here, these beings came here to make us.
Humanity seems to be going down a certain path. What do you think is the end goal?
It's the end of us. They want to remove us. We've got too powerful. There are too many of us with money. There are too many. There are too many, as they would say, there are too many of us. Period. And we're overpopulated. We're not, of course. All of that's a lie. The figures are wrong. But we have served our purpose. We're out of control. They want to. They want to now get rid of us. They've tried things in 2020. They tried to subdue us, and too many people fought back and refused to comply. So their game plan is to dramatically reduce the population and just leave enough in place to have an infrastructure operating. But yeah, as far as they're concerned, it's time for us to go. And that's the plan.
How do you feel about the future? Are you optimistic, or are we doomed?
I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. But I think the people that are awake will get through this. The people that comply might find themselves taking one too many medical interventions or being exposed to a bit too much bad frequency or EMF. It's going to be hard for people that don't comply because they don't want us to participate within the system. Now, we can't all go and live off grid, but that would be the answer. But I think that they're panicking. I think they're rushing things now. Too many people are waking up. Too many people are communicating and sharing this information with each other. I think they're going to start making mistakes. If they try to have another pandemic, which I think they will, I'd be surprised at how many people would comply this time, because there'll be people that went along with it the first time that now wouldn't. So I always say the same thing to people. If for propaganda to work, for us to fear something that the government are pushing, we have to know about it. Now, if we turn the news off, if we decide we're no longer interested in what happens with the government, we're no longer interested in watching the news, we're going to turn it all off. And if someone shares, like they do with me all the time, one particular person, have you seen what Trump's just said? Have you seen what Keir Starmer's just done? And I keep saying, this is how propaganda works. It doesn't matter if you know they're all puppets. And it doesn't matter if you believe it. You're participating. You're sharing it with me. I'll then tell somebody else and share it. Turn it off. The game doesn't work if we refuse to play.
Yeah. Yeah. And you could also say that if they had already won, then they would have no use for propaganda.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so I think we've just got to disengage. We've got to refuse to participate. And I think that there are certain things we can do as well. I think we can look at where we spend our money. Now, I'm going to go on to Amazon if I need a printer cartridge. I sell my books on Amazon. I have to be in the system to survive at this moment in time. But what I don't have to do is go to the local supermarket when I can support the greengrocer up the road or the independent butcher. So there are some things that we can do. And I think that perhaps what we should consider doing is all standing together and picking a particular day where we boycott something. And it could be over here, a supermarket chain like Tesco's. We could say, right, on Monday, none of us are going. We're not going to go there. Or none of us are going to use McDonald's. Or we're not going to use we're not going to use BP to fill our cars up with fuel. I think if we start doing things like that, then we can start making a difference. But as I said earlier on about Stockholm Syndrome, we're looking for the answers and the help to come from the very people we despise. And we have to realise that we are the solution. We've just got to work together and ignore things for a moment. What sexuality someone is, what religion they are, what colour they are, what football team they support. None of this matters. If you're on the side of the road and you need a blood transfusion, in a car crash, you're not going to start questioning the ethnicity of the person and what football team they supported. So don't be so bloody silly. This is all divide and conquer. We've got to stand together, put our differences to one side, and turn the bloody news off, turn the TV off, and just stop participating.
Yeah, hear. Wow, Guy, I am going to be researching so much after this conversation and probably rewatching this again and again. Thanks so much for the chat. Really enjoyed it.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed our show. As you can see, our content can be a tad controversial at times. Because of that, the algorithm really doesn't like us. The good news is that's where you can. If you like us and you want to support us, the easiest ways are to like, comment, and subscribe. It costs you nothing, but it means the world to us here at BluntClarity. On top of that, we've made a list of some of our favorite videos, which you can find right here. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Enjoy.